First, happy Father's Day to all fathers. And let's give a round of applause for all the fathers. God bless you all. And I want to start with that, actually. I want to think about what a parent, a father, or a mother who knows their job, who knows what they're doing, how do they teach? And this applies, of course, to anybody who attempts to sort of hand on some goodness or some wisdom to others. Well, you don't need to tell most little kids, for example, or someone who's learning or growing, you don't really need to tell them, make sure you eat ice cream. You don't need to tell them, you need to play a certain amount of video games. That doesn't need to be said. What you need to tell people, what you need to teach, is a corrective. You need to say, okay, limit how much, sugar intake you have, or limit how much time you spend indoors. Make sure you go outside and get sunlight and exercise. You don't need to sort of command things that somebody's already doing. You don't need to tell somebody something that they already know and that they're already practicing. And you certainly don't need to encourage somebody to keep doing something that they already strongly have a tendency to already. Jesus doesn't need to tell us, make sure you stand up for your rights. He doesn't need to say that. He doesn't need to tell us, make sure you get vengeance against somebody who hurts you. We don't need to hear that. We know that. We're really good at that already. He needs to give us a corrective. He needs to fix where we go too far. And we go way too far with vengeance. So let's look at what he says. And I'm just going to focus, and we heard the gospel. There's a lot of sort of detail that he adds to it. But I want to just focus on 3 words. And maybe they're the 3 most famous words that Jesus is known for. Love your enemies. That's it. We'll just stop with that. And as always, or as often we can do, let's compare what Jesus said to what he didn't say. He didn't say, be very close, pay close attention to this. What Jesus did not say is, love your enemies unless they're Democrats. Did he say that? Maybe I missed that part of the gospel. He didn't say, love your enemies unless they're Republicans. Or unless they're, marching or not marching. Don't love your enemies unless they're gay or homophobic. Those are the exceptions. As if Jesus didn't know that there were people that, didn't live the way that we wanted. He's talking about enemies. He knows what he's saying. We're not going to surprise him. Well, no, Jesus, maybe you didn't think of this. He didn't say love your enemies unless they hurt your family. He didn't say love your enemies unless you heard that they're talking about you. Then forget it. Then all about vengeance. We're not smarter than Jesus. We're not going to think of examples that he didn't think of. He didn't say, though, agree with your enemies. He didn't say that. You see the difference? Love your enemies is one thing. Agree with your enemies is something else. When somebody attacks, the truth, yeah, we love them, but then we don't agree with them. This is the ironic, weird, funny thing. Jesus is asking us to love somebody that we disagree with completely. That's exactly the command. Debate is fine when we're accomplishing his command of love. Love and then debate. If you don't love, if you're going to debate in hatred, you're not going to do any good. Nobody's going to ever be convinced with a hateful and angry argument. If you love them, though, maybe there's a little hope you'll change somebody's mind. He didn't say agree with your enemies. He also didn't say sort of completely sell out your rights and never fight for them. I said at the beginning, we're already doing that. He's not expecting us to stop that. But he wants us in all of our activities, especially those towards our enemies, to do it in a certain way. And that way is lovingly. Because our tendency towards self-defense turns into vengeance, and it turns into dehumanizing the people that we're fighting against. And maybe the fight we're fighting is totally right. Great. But even when we're fighting a completely true fight, our enemies are still human beings. And Christ's command applies to them. And it's this amazing, difficult irony of Christianity that even when we fight somebody, our Lord is commanding us to love them. And if they're not doing that, who cares? That's not your business. And if somebody else is not a follower of Christ, you don't get to not act like one. You still are one. He did not say, this is the hardest part, he didn't say, pretend to love your enemies. He didn't say that. He didn't say, pander to your enemies. Use them for votes. He didn't say, don't have any enemies either, by the way. He didn't say, be best friends with everybody. He did not say, make sure everybody likes you. He's assuming that we're going to have enemies. What does enemy mean? It means somebody who hates me, not somebody that I hate. And Jesus knew any human being with any integrity is going to have enemies. But if you're going to have integrity as a Christian, it means you love them back, no matter how much they hate you. That's impossible, right? Yes, just like all of Christ's commands, it is impossible. It is. It is impossible to do that. And that's why Christ gives us supernatural grace to be able to do it. It is impossible as a human being in a human world to love our enemies. Because alone, look at what happens when you leave human beings alone. Just turn on the news. This is what happens when you leave us alone without God. No. With God, when we are united to Him, when we receive Him in the Eucharist today, then we have the strength to do what He's asking us to do, because He loves us even when we are His enemies through sin. And so we receive Him today so that we can have the strength to love the way He loves.